Hello students, today we will study literature from Indian languages in translation. So today one such translated work we will take up. It is a novel called Anandamath. It is a Bengali novel. It is written by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay and it was published in 1882. Of all Bankim's works, by far the most important for its astonishing political consequences was this Anandamath. It is the first attempt at India's own historical novel. This novel first appeared in serial form in Banga Darshan, a literary magazine that Bankim himself founded in 1872. Anandamath is a political novel and it depicts a sannyasi army fighting the soldiers of the Muslim Nawab of Murshidabad. The book calls for the rise of Hindu nationalism to uproot the foreign Turco-Afghan Muslim rule of Bengal and put forth as a temporary alternative the East India Company till Hindus were fit for self-rule. Set in the background of the Sannyasi rebellion in the late 18th century, it is considered one of the most important novels in the history of Bengali and Indian literature. Its importance is heightened by the fact that it became synonymous with the struggle for Indian independence from the British Empire. The novel was banned by the British. The first English translation came out in 1906 with the title The Abbey of Bliss. Rabindranath Tagore once commented about the novel, here I quote, "Bankim Chandra's sannyasis are fabulous men, rather like characters in the Mahabharata, where God Krishna appears as a character among princes, princesses, sages, heroes, noblemen, evil courtiers, soldiers." So, this novel is a legend of the struggle for freedom against John Company's extortionate rule of the 18th century. The plot background was loosely based on the devastating Bengal famine of 1770 and the Sannyasi rebellion. Bankim Chandra dreams of an India rid of the British. In his dream, he romantically imagined untrained sannyasi soldiers fighting and beating the highly experienced royal army. Despite the romanticism, the novel's patriotism was a significant voice amidst the oppression and the struggle for independence. The novel's prose has been quoted by many writers talking about Indian independence. Anandamath helped create the atmosphere and the symbolism for the nationalist movement leading to the Indian independence in 1947. It contains the famous hymn Vande Mataram, which means I revere thee, mother, which has become India's official national song. The novel reflects tensions and oppositions within Indian culture between Hindus and Muslims, ruler and the ruled, indigenous people and foreign overlords, jungle and town, Aryan and non-Aryan, celibacy and sexuality. It is both a political and a religious work. By creating the past of Bengal, Bankim hoped to create a new present that involved a new interpretation of the past. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay was born in 1838. He was a Bengali writer, poet and journalist. He wrote 13 novels and several serious, serio-comic, satirical, scientific and critical treatises in Bengali. His works were widely translated into other regional languages of India as well as in English. Bankim was born in an Orthodox Brahmin family at Kathalpara, North 24 Parganas in Bengal. He was educated at Hooghly College and Presidency College, Calcutta. He was one of the first graduates of the University of Calcutta. From 1858 until his retirement in 1891, he served as a deputy magistrate and deputy collector in the government of British India. He died in 1894. Bankim Chandra is widely regarded as a key figure in the literary renaissance of Bengal as well as India. Some of his writings, including novels, essays and commentaries, were a breakaway from traditional verse-oriented Indian writings and provided an inspiration for authors across India. Critics consider Bankim Chandra as the best novelist in Bengali literature. Their belief is that few writers in world literature have excelled in both philosophy and art as Bankim has done. Most popular among those writings, most widely read by the masses, and most deeply impregnated by the spirit of his own great love for India is the novel Anandamath. Anandamath established Bankim Chandra's skill as a novelist. This novel is most representative of Bankim Chandra's ideology. In a colonized nation, Bankim Chandra could not overlook politics. He believed that Bengal had been entrusted with a divine destiny, the destiny of ultimately leading India into a rebirth of freedom. In Bankim Chandra's view, this reborn freedom was to include not merely freedom from British rule, but also freedom from the inequities of the caste system, freedom from the prevailing restraints on style in literature, freedom of women from the tyranny of men, freedom of the farmers from the oppressions laid upon by the wealthy landholders, and freedom of thought and action from the manifold thraldom that crippled India as a result of man's own ignorance. All these ideas find a place in Anandamath. Bankim's great achievement for India was that he made patriotism a religion, and his writings have become the gospel of India's struggle for political independence. Rabindranath Tagore said, Bengali literature was able so quickly to attain such a wholesome maturity in so short a time because Bankim Chandra alone took charge both of ideal creative writing and perfect constructive atticism. Today in India, the novelist Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay is known as the Emperor of Bengali literature, Sahitya Samrat. The plot revolves around the Order of the Children, a group of men under the leadership of a Hindu saint, which tries to liberate the country of the foreign rule. The novel is divided into 4 parts. The first part deals with the story of Mahendra, a landlord in the town of Padachinha. Famine has struck the areas of Bengal, which has caused the people of the villages and towns to migrate to bigger cities. The novel starts with the scene of Mahendra's wife Kalyani fleeing through the forest with her infant, trying to escape from man hunters who will kill her for food. After a long chase, she loses consciousness at the bank of a river. A Hindu monk stumbles upon her and the baby, but before he can help her, he is arrested by the British soldiers because other monks were fueling revolt against the British rule. While being dragged away, he spots another monk who is not wearing his distinctive robes and sings, "In mild breeze by the bank of the river, in the forest resides a respectable lady." This monk deciphers the song, rescues Kalyani and the baby, taking them to a rebel monk hideout. Concurrently, Mahendra is also given shelter by the monks and they are reunited. Mahatma Satyananda, who is the leader of the order of the children, this order was called Santandal. Satyananda invokes the patriotic feelings in the mind of Mahendra by giving him a glimpse of how the country was before the arrival of the British rule, how the country is under the British rule, and how the country will be if it is allowed to be so, by showing him the three faces of Bharat Mata or Mother India as three goddess idols being worshipped in three consecutive rooms. First, what Mother was: an idol of goddess Jagadhatri. What Mother has become is represented by an idol of goddess Kali, and what Mother will be is represented by an idol of goddess Durga. When Mahendra is told that if he wants to join the order, then he has to leave his family, he quits. While leaving the ashram, Kalyani's child drinks poison playfully, and then Kalyani herself drinks it so as to clear the path of Mahendra for joining the order. Mahendra joins the order, but he and the Mahatma are arrested by the officials of the British rule. The second and third part of the novel deal with the stories of the main fighters of the order. Jivananda is the main protagonist in these parts, while Bhavananda plays a side role. Jivananda rescues the daughter of Mahendra and gives her to his sister. There he meets his wife Shanti. They start recalling the old days and their family time. Meanwhile, Bhavananda revives Kalyani. Gradually, the rebel influence grows and their ranks swell. Emboldened, they shift the headquarters to a small brick fort. The Islamic rulers, with the help of the British, attack the fort with a large force. The rebels blockade the bridge over the nearby river, but they lack any artillery or military training. In the fighting, the British makes a tactical retreat over the bridge. The Sannyasin's army, though lacking military experience, chases the British into this trap. Once the bridge is full of rebels, British artillery opens fire, inflicting severe casualties. However, some rebels manage to capture some of the cannons and turn the fire back onto the British lines. The British are forced to fall back, the rebels winning their first battle. The joining of Shanti, Jivananda's wife, to the order is very dramatic. In the fourth part, the decisive battle between the Islamic British armies and the order is depicted. The story ends with the Islamic rule ousted. Mahendra and Kalyani build a home again, with Mahendra continuing to support the sannyasins. In the fag end of the story, even though the Islamic rule has been forced to come to an end, Satyananda does not want to end the battle till Hindu Rajya is established. Then a saint convinces him that time is not ripe for the establishment of the Hindu rule. It has to wait a while for that, and meanwhile the British should take up the reins of the country to give it a definite modern shape. In the end, Jivananda and Shanti walk hand in hand singing Vande Mataram. Thus, the novel depicts how the ordinary people can be inspired to follow strict rules to form an army and fight against tyranny of the Islamic rule. The novel is basically about the nationalist movements that started in Bengal. Through this novel, Bankim has tried to give a way of hope to the nationalists that even the ordinary people, when united by the spirit of giving everything for their country, can beat the trained and skilled bayonets and cannons of the British Empire. The themes of Anandamath are devotion and celibacy. It starts with a human voice cutting through the silence of the forest to ask, "Shall I ever have my heart's desire?" Two humans toss the question back and forth. "What will you sacrifice?" asks the second. "My life," answers the first. "Life," says the second voice, "is an insignificant sacrifice. Anyone can offer this." "What else can I offer?" says the first voice. "Devotion," declares the second voice. The novel evokes an uprising of Hindu sannyasis, the Santan or children of Mother India, against the British soldiers in the employ of a Muslim ruler. Within a few pages, Bankim introduces the themes through the presentation of the miseries of the Bengal famine, a group of cannibalistic dacoits who plan to eat the tender flesh of a mother and her child, saintly Mahatmas, dastardly British sepoys, the possibility of death by poison, and cross-dressing sannyasins, and the song Vande Mataram. It is sung by the Santan of Mother India. Anandamath identifies society's ailment as a lack of potent male power, which can be revived through celibacy. A drive for physical regeneration, militancy for the nation, and devotion to the nation. Anandamath also attempts to remind the readers their forgotten military heritage. He taps into the popular appeal of the monastic orders and the historical existence of Hindu warrior ascetics of the past. Anandamath portrays ascetics who, rather than denying reality or attempting to transcend the everyday, are crafting it. The ascetic nationalist sacrifices his family and home for the liberation of the nation. The Santans must renounce everything for the sake of Mother India and take a vow never to meet their wives or children until the goal of liberation is reached. A Santan tells Mahendra, "When we have mastered all techniques and attained our goal, we shall return to our homes for our duties as householders." To become Santans, the protagonists Jivananda, Bhavananda and Mahendra pass through a process of initiation, of which the central vow is self-conquest or the conquest of desire. Bankim Chandra puts emphasis on brahmacharya or celibate dedication. As Satyananda explains, children are of two classes, those that are initiated and those that are not. Those that are not initiated are either householders or beggars. They present themselves only at the time of warfare. They are rewarded and they retire. But those who are initiated have renounced all they hold dear and near to their hearts. They are the leaders of the order. Thus, brahmacharya becomes a crucial marker of difference within society, which decides who will be leading the struggle for an independent nation. We have already touched upon the point that Anandamath identifies society's weakness as a lack of potent male power. Now we will discuss it in detail. The novel demonstrates the causes and consequences of the loss of masculinity and the possibilities of reparation, primarily through a drive for physical regeneration, militancy for the nation, celibacy and devotion to the nation. The plot of the novel revolves around the male protagonist Mahendra, a prosperous landowner who converts to the cause of Indian liberation after meeting ascetic nationalists or Santans and Satyananda, their leader. Through Mahendra, Bankim Chandra depicts the establishment of the new nationalist male subject. Anandamath also depicts events that show Bengali valor in past confrontations with the alien invaders like the Muslims and the British. It attempts to remind the Bengalis that in the long history of subjection, there are quite a few great episodes of resistance also. It counters allegations of the Bengali male as helpless, timid, and accustomed to crouch under suppression. It engages in the power-knowledge nexus in the colonial domain by presenting the Bengalis and by extension Hindus with their supposedly forgotten military heritage. This presence of physical prowess in the past is then established as constitutive of Bengali and Hindu masculinity. Bankim Chandra's search for martial Bengalis or Hindus or Indians converges on the Hindu warrior ascetics of the past. The colonialist narratives portrayed the popular wandering, alms-seeking Hindu ascetics either as idlers or frauds. On the other hand, the revenue-collecting warrior ascetics were described in colonialist narratives as bandits, murderers and villains. Bankim Chandra merges these two contradictory figures of Hindu monks in this novel. Bankim Chandra's notion of ascetic nationalism is an ideology that promises citizenship and the nation state to the colonized. Here, the emphasis on celibate dedication, known as brahmacharya, facilitates a relational construction of masculinity. Firstly, the ritual of initiation legitimizes a hierarchy within the indigenous males, and secondly, it further defines the trajectory that they are to follow. In other words, only those with certain behavioral characteristics who have made certain kinds of sacrifices for the nation can claim legitimate authority to be its leaders. Jivananda is forced to choose between the valorized ideal of manly self-control and his desire for his wife Shanti. He must deny himself his conjugal life in order to establish his masculinity and his honor. On the other hand, Bhavananda, who falls in love with Kalyani, chooses to die in the battlefield as atonement for breaking his vow. Thus, the novel acknowledges the fallibility of the indigenous Hindu male, but portrays male ascetic nationalists as holding their vow of chastity in the highest regard. A Santan remarks, "We do not pretend to be above all attachment. We simply observe the sanctity of our vows." This successfully refutes the derogatory construction of the Bengalis or Hindus as morally bankrupt and lacking in self-control. Thus, Bankim Chandra's protagonists emerge as agents in the production of a new self, the ascetic nationalist subject. The novel is a piece of historical fiction imbued with the spirit of nationalism and selfless patriotism. It gave tremendous impetus to the various religious, patriotic and national activities, beginning with Hindu missionary activity and culminating in the militant movement in Bengal in the first decade of the 20th century. This novel became the inspiration of the revolutionary freedom movement of India. Not only in Bengal, but all over India, men dedicated themselves to the task of making Bankim Chandra's dream come true. Bankim Chandra was a prophet of modern India who stepped back to grounding in the past in order to take great strides towards the future. His influence on his countrymen was deep, inspiring the pacifist, philosophical and artistic minds like Rabindranath Tagore's, as well as politically inclined Bengalis who resorted to terrorist activities to express their nationalist fervor. His works fed the multiple attitudes of an awakening India. After centuries of political slavery, of social tyranny and of economic exploitation, the wheel of life in India is beginning to revolve again. In the new awakening of a great nation, this prophetic novel from the pen of Bankim Chandra has played a dynamic part. The novel contains the song Vande Mataram, which, set to music by Rabindranath Tagore, was taken up by many Indian nationalists and is now the national song of India. Vande Mataram is originally a Bengali and Sanskrit stotra personifying India as mother goddess. His vision sparked the imagination of his compatriots in Bengal and other parts of India during the Indian freedom movement. When Bipin Chandra Pal decided to start a patriotic journal in August 1906, he named it Vande Mataram after Bankim Chandra's song. Lala Lajpat Rai also published a journal of the same name. This novel, though over a century old now, continues to speak to people today. It stimulated an ideal of nationalism in the past and continues to be thought-provoking in the present. As India struggles to westernize without losing her soul, to go high-tech and yet keep intact the unique gifts which she can bring to an emerging planetary culture. It is to Bankim Chandra's credit that his voice is still worth listening to, still resonant and alive. Here we come to the conclusion of our discussion of Anandamath by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. I hope you have enjoyed this session. Thank you.